Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to give 2 minutes for everybody to settle down.
I wish there was so much crowd for my movies in cinema. I will believe that when it translates into box office.
Should we start?
Yeah.
Everybody's in? Okay. So first of all, thank you, wonderful audience. I know it's really tough to be standing in queues, but I hope you all are all in and you will enjoy this session. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And thanks, Anurag. Thank you for being here. So we've called this a kind of master class, but it's a freewheeling conversation about his work, his craft, and how he's got here. We'll speak for a little while, and then we'll open it out to the audience to ask questions. So, from the grand privileged position of having been in a film school, let's ask you how did you learn filmmaking? I mean, we always think, filmmaking, going to a film school is so important, etc.
I was rejected by every film school.
Great. So tell us, how did you learn it then?
I don't know, I discovered cinema too late. I think I used to watch Hindi mainstream movies. And I grew up in Banaras, in Varanasi. And my family was a family of mathematicians. So everybody is very strong about mathematics, and my father is very proud about mathematics. So I always chose a subject they knew nothing about, so I chose biology. So all my life I've done things like that. So my father because he did not know anything about biology and what I was. So I just kept pursuing that so I wouldn't get questioned at home. And my father was in a very transferable job. He set up most of the powerhouses across India. And so I was sent to a boarding school. And I was very young in my class. I was always younger than everyone else. So it kind of, at that young age, kids can be very cruel. If you're smaller and younger, and they would bully you. So to escape that, I would spend all my time in the library. So I grew up in a library. So it's like library is a safe place for me. So if you look at my house, it's also like a library. So anywhere I go, I build a library around me. So I feel safe there. And I end up just reading a lot. And coming from Banaras without any opportunities, I could not find anything that resonated with me except literature. And I was studying to be a microbiologist. And that's when I discovered cinema, when I was in university, at a film festival in 1993. And suddenly I saw something that resonated with me. I was like, this is what I want to do. And it did not take me much time to leave. I just packed my bags, told my parents, and they were very disappointed in me. And I upped and left. I was 19 years old. I started very early, and I had no idea about film schools. So by the time I applied for all film schools, it's like I say it like a joke, they rejected me. I was always very late. So in the sense, I applied for film schools and everything, it was when the admission dates were closed. I think somehow that worked for me. It worked for me because all my friends got through film schools. Whoever were, like Imtiaz Ali was in XIC. My friend Sachin Kumar was in FTI. Somebody got somewhere else. So I got a place to stay with them. But I vehemently went on my own journey, reading and writing. And I think what came very handy for me was I had this immense capacity to write. I would write 20-page letters to my father. I would write non-stop. So I would essay competition. I would make up my own answers in history exams. But they were so long, I think teachers did not read through and they just gave me good marks. So I could fill sheets like nobody else. And I till date write like that. I just finished my script this morning in the hotel. So And because of that writing capacity, I was fortunate because I came to the city of Mumbai at a right time of transition in television. India had just discovered daily soap operas. And all the soap operas were being controlled by very English-speaking South Bombay people. And they really needed somebody who could write in Hindi. At the same time, they were very privileged elite who did not want to give credit. That worked for me. So I could hone my writing skills on their expense. So I wrote without credit, I got good money. And I had to churn out 3 episodes a day. And that was the beginning. And I kept discovering cinema. And then I think my real growth in education started when I started working in a place called Media Classics, where I met these 2 very geeky brothers, Sriram and Sridhar Raghavan. And Sriram was doing Raman Raghav, and Sridhar was always writing. He was also another person who used to churn out episodes for CID. He also had this immense writing capacity. And we bonded very well, Sridhar and me. And Sridhar put me on a journey. He gave me a book by James M. Cain to read. Anybody who wants to be a writer, I always tell them, I've made my own separate course of how to learn writing, which is like start reading James M. Cain first. and it somehow, he kept introducing me to these books. And I went on my own journey of reading and writing and watching films. And because I had not seen anything, they would sit there and talk about Godfather. I did not know what Godfather was. They would talk about Taxi Driver. I did not know what Taxi Driver was. All I had seen was D. Sica's movies, and I had seen Italian neorealism at the festival. And then I would talk about that. They knew more about more filmmakers. So I was on this curious journey of consumption. And just consuming movies day and night, which went on for a long time. That's how it all started.
But what about the actual art of writing a script, where you develop characters, you have, all this business of the 3 acts, all that?
I don't like that whole 3-act structure.
Yeah.
I think writing is a very personal thing. And this is the reason why I was asked to leave from FTI when I was teaching writing there. Because I would tell them, just throw the theory away. And because writing is not mathematics. And 3-act structure makes it into mathematics. It all becomes very, there's no soul in it. And I want to see the writer's soul in it. And my writing process became like, I just write. So what happens is I start writing and it takes me somewhere. And the characters write themselves. And there's this, I once went for a rehab because I was drinking a lot. And in the rehab, when they were trying to teach us about addiction, that's when I realized this is how I write. And which is about, when they were teaching us about addiction, and they said, you know what, our brain has this, we only use 8 to 9 to 10% of our conscious brain. But addiction comes from our 90% of the other subconscious brain. We don't realize it. That's where it kind of, the habit starts to form. And writing somehow for me was like that. Once you start writing, you're writing from your conscious brain, and most people, what they do is, they keep reading what they've written. And when you read what you've written, you will never be satisfied. You'll always think this is lesser than what it should have been. So the first thing I learned was, don't read what you write. Just keep writing. And what happens is, if you're writing in a flow, around 15 to 20% way in, your subconscious brain kicks in. And then it starts to flow. Your writing starts surprising you. Suddenly you're like, did I write that? Did I just come up with that line? Because you just surprise yourself, because your characters surprise themselves. And it all comes, and somehow I trust the gut instinct, and I started doing that. And by the time I was on my 3rd script, I started trusting that process. And once I started trusting that process, I tried to figure it out, and I started trying to talked to various writers that I knew or came across and who I admired, especially authors, fiction authors. And I realized a lot of people have the same common process. They just write. They do not sit down and create character sketches. They don't sit down and do plot points. They have one idea or one thread, and the whole writing process is like unraveling a sweater. You know, you start pulling the thread, it all kind of comes in, and then by the end of it, realize it's a one long single thread. And that's how writing is. Everybody has their own process. I think everybody needs to find their own process. This was my process. And I started practicing that in my class in FTI with the students. And I would do individual sessions with each one. And somehow worked. It worked because it was the most productive class in the history of FTI. And each one wrote the script. The most reluctant of them wrote a script. It somehow worked. My last student, I just saw his film yesterday. Pada, Kamal. Such an amazing film. I was trying to tell him that, please teach me how to make films like that.
So writing is that personal process where you're sort of working it out in your own way but what happens when you now have a crew, you have actors, you have cinematographer, you have locations. What is that process of communication? How do you deal with, I mean, you talk a lot about chaos and, you know.
In the beginning, it was difficult. Now it's much more simpler because it's like one person who's leaving finds me another person. So if like my first AD leaves, he gets me another first AD. And he's already, that another first AD is prepared what he's getting into. And my world is built on trust. I am not a person of pre-production. So I'm not a person of a lot of prep because my filmmaking comes from a place where we had no money to make movies. And because we had no money to make movies, we never got what we wanted. So I learned that be prepared for everything. We had no money to build sets. We had no money to get properties. So properties we brought from our own homes. And somehow I realized, I was watching National Geographic. And I was like, you know what, who is stopping me to shoot in the entire city if I don't disturb anyone? And slowly, over a period of time, we evolved a process of shooting movies by following two rules. We don't put camera in a public place on ground, and we do not interfere with people's way of lives. And like a documentary filmmaker meets National Geographic, we started shooting with long lenses. And we started keeping the camera away. We would find a vantage point and shoot. In the beginning, we made mistakes, like we would go too high and all shots were like this. So we started going away from people and probably a floor above, first floor. So it almost looked like eye level. We would put cameras in vans and open the shutter and shoot. We would shoot in the middle of the street. Like whole Black Friday we shot like that. We had no money. So that kind of and the team started enjoying that process. So, and I have worked with very few collaborators over a period of time. And we kind of got into that process. We respected each other's process. And I think slowly when I started working with Rajiv, he also stopped going for recce after 3 films. So me and Rajiv Ravi would sit and say, go there and find a location, tell me what is available. And then it's the perspective that makes it look the way it does. It's not really the location, it's how you look at a place. So it's that point of view that we started working. And me and Rajiv used to work in silence. We just somehow got, and now I've got a mini Rajiv called Sylvester. So it kind of, it's a very organic process, and where the whole team knows that they all come because they're all wanting to be filmmakers, and everybody participates in everything. And after 2-3 films, everybody gets fired and they're forced to make a film, which is why we have an army of people who are making movies, which has come from the same kind of a collective group. We keep pushing each other to go and make a movie. When I'm not making a feature film, produce short films for my people. I'll write dialogues for someone else. Somebody will do something else for someone else. Because we started building a community like that from one office where we had no money and all we had was, we would make like rice, dal, pickle and one sabji. And that's all that was available. And there was one camera and there was this editing setup, and I think whole lot of cinema came from there. And that's for us, the peak period was like 2013 when we had 5 films at the Cannes Film Festival. And all made with no money.
What about actors? You worked with mostly unknown actors, I mean, who of course have become very known faces.
I work with very good actors.
Yeah. How do you cast? Tell us your process of casting.
For me, it's all about, like, I cast based on a personality. And for me, the most important thing in an actor is here, the eyes. And the screen presence is all here. Because unlike theatre, when you're performing and you're attracting the audience, it's almost like this whole mating thing that you do. And you use your whole body language and you use voice and you use everything. In films, it's very different because your audience is sitting right here looking into your eyes. When we talk to each other, we look into each other's eyes. That's what the audience does when they're looking at it. And if the truth is not there in their eyes, then it doesn't matter how good their voice is or modulation is or what they do with their body language. So I just look for the truth in their eyes. And when I find it, I get them in. And I generally work with very good actors, so it doesn't matter because we normally don't have those kind of budgets or backing. So I look for we have a team of, we started with Black Friday around, we started building a casting directors team, and we would go and find actors who are unemployed, doing theatre, doing street shows, and would pick them and bring them in. And we kept looking for newer actors. In the beginning, this process of making a film, new actors and shooting without permission was difficult. But now it's become a norm. Like last 10 years has been easy. Since Vasipur, it's been very easy. Because now everybody gives in to the process. Now, we don't need to find actors. They kind of find us. They know if they're good. Now we don't need to find a lot of crew members and people. Everybody now comes and wants to go through the process. And because we came from chaos, so I don't know how to function when everything is in control. I remember I was shooting Bombay Velvet and first time studio film, everything was such a setup, I was so lost. So I went on the set and I created chaos. So I started giving different instruction to different people. And I personally instructed everyone to do different things. And there was no coordination, there was chaos. I went to Rajiv, let's shoot.
Just to continue with the casting story, tell us, how did you find Nawazuddin?
Nawazuddin, like I remember when I was casting for Satya. I was Ramu's film, I was the writer, assistant, casting director, everything. I was casting for the film. And there's a very good actor called Rajpal Yadav who had come to Mumbai, and he was leaving Mumbai because he was very depressed and given up. So one actor called Ashraf ul Haq, he's passed away now. He was in Black Friday. He told me, can you just talk to this guy and give him some hope? So we met him at the railway station. Rajpal Yadav. Nawaz was carrying his suitcase. That's how I met him. So Rajpal, I said, listen, I'm casting for a movie called Shul. I have a role for you. Why are you leaving the city? So he did a role, one scene role of a coolie, which from where his career whole started. So Nawaz was there, he says, can I also get a role? So I said, there's no other role left. So I can put you somewhere in there. He says, I have no money to eat food. So I'll do anything. So in Shul, he played Rajpal played the coolie and Nawaz was a waiter in a scene with Manoj and Raveena. If you see, there's a very thin Nawaz. But that's how it all started. And then when we were doing Black Friday, Sarfarosh had come out and Nawaz had one or two scenes which he was very powerful in that scene. And I remembered that scene. And when we were doing Black Friday, after shooting the interrogation scene, and we had no uh, monitors to watch anything. And there's this assistant of mine who's also my researcher, Arpadna. She's a filmmaker now. She made a film. And she was with Nawaz in NSD. And we shot that whole sequence, and Nawaz did this thing where there's this hair stuck on his tongue, which I liked very much, and I did not say cut, and I kept watching him. As I stepped out, Aparna was gushing at him. She was talking to the other girl saying, look at his eyes, he's so beautiful. So when I heard these two girls talking, I came back and I started staring at it. So I said, and then because the room was so dimly lit, all the interrogation scenes were shot in this red light, dense red light. So I was watching him, and that's when I really saw into his eyes, and I realized, there's this so much in there, and he is so invisible outside. So I liked him. I said, let's do something more. But I at that point, I had no idea, because my first film was banned, my second film was shelved, my third was shelved. I was the most untouchable pariah of the industry. Nobody wanted to make my movies. So I said, we should keep meeting. And he didn't, in the sense he was traveling. And I started writing Gulal, and Black Friday again got banned by the Supreme Court. And we did not know anything. And at the same time, Nawaz started to do a film with Nandita Das called Firak. And I wanted Nawaz for a film, and he was not available. So I got this actor called Deepak Dobriyal in Gulal. And then Deepak did Omkara. It's like a cycle. Deepak did Omkara, and Omkara got him the Filmfare Award, and Deepak became this very big actor. And suddenly Deepak was not available. So I went back to Nawaz. And that's at the same time that Deepak was supposed to do Talash, and he was not available. Something else happened. And then I was looking at Nawaz. I said, I want to do this film. The idea of Wasipur had started to germinate. At the same time, it was hard to sell Nawaz, or to anybody, the whole cast. So I started doing what I do generally, like, build actors up over a period of films. So I said, what? I want you to do a song for me in Devdi. So he came and did Emotional Atyachar. And then I put him in a song where he plays this band person. And still nobody wanted him. The studio didn't want him. The film was almost 3 days before I was supposed to shoot. It got shelved. No, this is Gangsta. Devdi was shelved for 1 year. Nobody wanted to touch Devdi either. But Wasipur, UTV dropped the film 3 days before the shoot, while the whole crew was waiting. And overnight we had to find money, and the shoot got delayed by 5 days, because I did not want to let go of my actors. And we stuck by that. And I think what we all saw in Nawaz kind of came through. Also, Rajiv Ravi had shot a short film called Bypass. And Rajiv and me, we kind of work very closely together. He had shot Bypass, which Amit Kumar had directed, and Asif Kapadia had produced. And Nawaz had played the lead. So Rajiv had the same faith in Nawaz. So my whole team was kind of sticking by him. And then it becomes much more easier to fight, because, the entire team is with you and say, like, we believe in it. So after that fight was through, luckily for us, after a long time, first time from India, like after 7 or 8 years, India had a film at Cannes, which was Udaan. And because of Udaan, and I was the writer and the producer and everything, suddenly everybody wanted to come around us. And by then, whenever we went into the shoot, Udaan ended up winning every award at home. That's when all the studios came back and said, we'll fund Wasipur. And suddenly, because I think it's always the external factors, they don't see. And then it became kind of easier. And once Wasipur came out, then there's so many films with Nawaz. The same year, Kahani came out. Kahani was shot later, but it came earlier. Kahani came out, this came out, and this 2-3 films back to back, and it just, Nawaz arrived.